As a psychoanalyst and a meditation instructor, I have the privilege of working directly with the mind. Every day in my clinic, I get a chance to see how the mind, in its natural state, is actually boundlessly creative. But there's a shadow side to everything, right? Have you ever noticed that your boundlessly creative mind actually can fill you with anxieties and fears and even self-doubt? Sort of like when you're trying to give a TED Talk, for example. And if we don't question the mind and what it tells us all the time, we can find ourselves living in a tiny, tight little world of habit and old routines that no longer serve us, and even misperceiving the world entirely. You know, it can be like being a puppet, and the mind is like a puppet master, you know, pulling the strings. Have you had that experience where you feel like you're being strung along? You know? Well, let's figure out how, when our strings are being pulled, to grab the strings and pull back, participate in our perception. So maybe we could even cut the strings, if we're really brave, and enter back into a direct relationship with the raw, direct world as it is. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's do that right now. Let's look directly at the mechanisms of the mind, the algorithms that actually shape perception. Let's start off with an example, music. So I bet that you believe that music exists outside of your mind, and that it has an objective reality out there somewhere. But actually, music is really just raw sound until it comes in contact with your mind. And actually, your mind transforms raw sound into music. It's an alchemical transformation. If you want to investigate this, you can actually just ask your dog. You can actually sit Fido down and stay and play Fido your very favorite piece of music. You know, pull out your guitar and strum and pour your heart out, and then open the treat bag and see which one is music to Fido's ears, right? So let's actually do that right now. Fido's not here today, but we're gonna do this with us. I'm gonna play you two examples, and let's see what your mind does with these two examples, all right? Here's the first one. Okay? And here's the second one. All right, so which one of these two examples sounds like music? Most people would say the second one. Unless, of course, you happen to be a professional jazz improviser. Because professional jazz players have spent their whole lives training their minds to hear the whole world as music. It's kind of like Italian composer Luciano Berio says, music is anything one listens to when one is intending to listen to music. You could try this yourself when you're walking past a noisy construction site or through a forest full of birds. You could actually try to hear the world as music, you know? That's participating in your perception. That's pulling back on the strings. You know, let's take another example. I want to play a little piano for you. And I'm going to play 6 notes on this piano. And let's see what your mind does with this. Anyone recognize that? All right, so happy birthday, right? I just play those notes, and your mind can be filled with cake and presents and childhood and aging and hip replacement and whatever else birthdays mean to you, right? But actually, is it really happy birthday? No, that's a concept, right? What actually happened was I pressed these plastic keys, it hit a piece of metal, the metal vibrated at a certain speed, pulsating the molecules in the air, which travel into your ear canals, And then the little hairs in your ear canals, the little cilia, vibrate in sympathy with that. And then that turns them into a fluid impulse and then an electrical impulse, which your mind compares to each other, and then bang, you get mental images. That's what you call music. You know, it's like there's an equation for this. It's kind of like the unified equation for music. You know, kind of like E equals MC squared. Time plus sound equals music. Time is going along, sound happens, and then your mind takes these two ingredients, mixes them together and says, is it predictable, is it familiar, is there something I can relate to here? Yes, it's music, I'll let it affect me, like the second example. But the first example I played was more like time and sound, your mind looks at it, is it random? Yeah, it's random, disorganized, I don't understand it, I have nothing familiar, bang, it's irrelevant. So your mind is always doing this with sound all the time. We could take a visual example too. Let's look at a visual example. You're looking up at the vast night sky. And out of all that, your mind sees the Big Dipper, right? You can pull an image of that up in your mind. So you're looking at the Big Dipper, but is it actually a Big Dipper? Of course not. It's just 7 points of light, vastly far away, and with tremendous amount of empty space in between them. Your mind looks up at that, connects the dots into a kind of a constellation, or actually it's an asterism, but that's technical, and it goes Big Dipper. It makes a concept, right? So it's kind of like what's happening right now. I'm just standing here on this huge red dot, and I'm actually just shaking the air with my vocal cords. Your mind is actually doing the work. I'm shaking the air, and your mind is relating to the shaking, the pulsations in the air, and your mind is transforming this, translating it, Google translating it into semantic meaning. And each one is doing it a little bit different based on your own history. So let's cut to the chase. We've talked about music and stars and speech, but let's talk about something that really relates to everybody. Relationships. Interactions with other human beings. Here's a quick survey. Think of this image. Toothpaste tube, no cap on it. How do you feel? Okay? Some of you will be thinking, I don't care, right? Those are the ones who leave the cap off. And the rest of us could be thinking, that's terrible. You left the cap off again. Like we talked about this is important, right? So the underlying algorithm there, right? The equation of the mind is something like capless toothpaste equals you don't love me, or you don't care for me, or you don't respect me, or you don't remember me. You don't remember what's important to me, right? You could do the same survey with toilet seat up, dishes in sink, didn't respond to my text, whatever your particular flavor of irritation is, right? I do couples therapy, so I hear these, they come up. It's very personal. Let's take one last example, mental health. What could be more personal than that? As a Jungian analyst, I'm actually really concerned about mental health in general with my clients, my own, and actually society at large these days. Maybe you're concerned about that too. So here's a very specific example. Here's one I got from James Hollis. You're driving down the street, road rage, right? You're driving down the street, you got a place to go. There's a time limit, it's important, you got to get there. Someone cuts you off. What does your mind say? It says, there you go again, cutting me off like you always do. But something doesn't match here, right? Because this is a stranger. You've never met them. You never will meet them. And they've done it once. So instead, it's not the straw that breaks the camel's back. This is a camel with one straw on it. Right? So somehow the equation that the mind has, cutting me off equals intentional disrespect, doesn't quite match the reality of the situation. There's a jarring conflict there. That's our chance to pull on the strings and say, not quite. Right? A few weeks ago, I was at CERN in Geneva, and at the Large Hadron Collider. And I'm standing there over top of the largest particle accelerator in the world, and all these explosions are happening under my feet at almost the speed of light. Something occurred to me. it occurred to me that every thought we have, every concept, every storyline that our mind sends us is like a Big Bang, giving birth to whole worlds of possibility. But we don't have to buy in to every single cosmic event that happens in our minds. We can actually choose, right? Clip, clip, clip. We can choose to let them arise and just drift away like a cloud. But here's my invitation to you. Get to know your puppet master. Get to know when your strings are being pulled, and pull back, or if you're really brave, cut the strings, cut the strings and win your liberation. And let yourself imagine a world where we're no longer at the mercy of the habits of mind that keep us separated from each other and from this huge, beautiful world. Thank you very much.